Great. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming today. So we're from the Boulder Valley School District in Colorado, and so today we're going to be talking about our story using Tableau to help us visualize student success. So I'm Claire Sims. I am the Senior Data Visualization Designer for the school district.
And I'm Andrew Moore. I'm the CIO of the district, and I have traditional IT, but I also have what's called Ed Tech. Ed Tech is the instruction inside the classroom, so there are 5 teachers on my staff that influence what we do in the IT realm pretty heavily. Okay, we're going to jump in. I'm going to do a little bit of overview how we got started with Tableau, and then I'm going to turn over to Claire, who's going to get into the visualizations that we've developed so far, and then we'll kind of close with what we see as the future. So before we get there, just a show of hands, how many of you are here from a K-12 institution? Okay, about half. How many are in a government facility different than K-12? Okay, and how many are here from higher ed? Okay, great. All right, awesome. What's that? Early ed. Yes, okay, early childhood development. All right, great. Okay, so we are here from Boulder. Boulder Valley, beautiful place, nestled right against the mountains, about 30,000 students, 4,500-ish employees to service those students across 55 schools. So it's basically Boulder and the surrounding suburbs into the mountains as well. So we started on this journey of data a number of years ago. It really started in my own mind about 2010. When I was coming into the district, we were actually shutting down a data warehouse effort that didn't quite get to the potential that we had all hoped that it would get to. And so there was this kind of lull and just discussion about what do we do with data. And so the discussions basically began in earnest in 2014 after that lull about how do we actually do this right. There were a couple of us that were pushing for a data warehouse type structure, some type of visualization tool, but I was also pushing back saying, you know what, we don't and we shouldn't do anything until we get proper funding. All of those in K-12, I know for sure, probably higher ed as well. Lots of efforts get off the ground, but then we don't have the energy, the effort, the resources to make it happen. And so I was pushing back to cabinet. I sit on cabinet. I had great support from Jonathan Dings, who's here tonight. He's on cabinet. And we basically just said, we're going to advocate for money. It wasn't until 2016 that we actually got the funding, and the funding was for the cost of Tableau. It was for one person in the IT organization to be able to do extracts and to build the data warehouse, and one person to do the visualizations. That's Claire. David Tomashik is here too. If you have technical questions later, he's the IT person that's responsible for all those polls. And so that gave us the foundation, and in our first year, 2016-17 school year, the first visualizations were off the ground. They were more administrative type visualizations, principal level, nothing that we really opened up to the masses or the teachers until this year. And now we have opened up the first teacher visualizations, the dashboards of students. Claire is going to go through those in pretty good detail. So you get a sense of what we've been able to do in a very short period of time, in my mind, with a very small team. Before we get into the details, I do want to just talk just briefly about branding. So much of the work over this period of time that started in 2014 was change management. And I know, at least in our organization, we don't have a dedicated change management group. We're lucky if we have business analysts that can spend a little bit of time on this. But it was about planting seeds. It was about talking about what data can do for us. And it was about taking a thing called Tableau. It was about taking something called a data warehouse. And it was about branding it into what we call VisLab. And so all the branding and everything we do when we talk about data is now spoken about in terms of VisLab. And people are starting to understand that, and it's helping us with getting the message out. All right, I'll turn it over to Claire, and she'll take you on a little more detailed journey.
Thank you. So as we were planning this talk and trying to think about, what do we want to share with you about our journey, we really thought about thinking of some of the components that we think have made this project successful so far and that we're thinking about moving into the future as well. So to start with that, we really start with a collaborative design process. And we think about this at all levels. So this really starts with the foundation of the data warehouse. So initially going into this project, myself and David, our data warehouse designer, we actually went out and made it a point to go meet and talk with our data owners in the district, different data users, to figure out what is the state of data and data use right now and what are the needs. We also make sure, as we're designing dashboards, to really bring in end users from the beginning. So, we don't just want to give them a product they've never seen before and see what they think of it at the end. We want to collect concepts from the start, get their feedback in it, and really that helps get their buy-in as well. And so then, again, with the dashboard design, we think of this as a collaborative and iterative process. And so to show this, I want to talk through one of our more recent dashboards that we have released, the teacher dashboard, and what this process looked like when we were working with our teachers. So I know this is kind of small, can't really see the details here, but what I'm trying to show is the outcome from a meeting that we had very early in this process, before even getting into the Tableau piece of this, to meet with a focus group of teachers and talk about what were their needs for a teacher-centric dashboard. So we talked about this in a few ways with them over a couple of meetings, thinking about both over here, some of the data sources that teachers are already using to help them think about their students' needs and guide their work with students. And then we even had this teacher focus group sketch out some dashboards. So if you could have a teacher dashboard, what would it look like? What would you include on there? From there, we took this information, and again, I'm really showing the nitty-gritty here, where we actually just sketched out these ideas first. So thinking about taking all that information and building it into a Tableau dashboard, here we really got into concepts of what are the different views that are needed, how are these teachers going to navigate through that, and again, get to the student information that they need. And so we've come up with this, our teacher dashboard. So let me walk you through what this looks like. So a few things to point out here. So this is the main page that teachers get to when they log into their dedicated teacher dashboard. We really wanted to make it very user-friendly. We also have here 4 main areas, and this is all kind of link-based navigation. So clicking on any of these areas is actually a link to that specific dashboard. The other piece here is that we always want to tie using data to action with students. What are you going to do with this data once you've analyzed it? So even here at the level of just which dashboard do I want to look at, we really tried to build in what is the purpose? Why would I be looking at that dashboard? What would I be learning from going to these different areas? And so I just want to show a little bit of an overview of a few of the areas in here, starting with the student overview. And so, on its face, this is a pretty simple dashboard. What we're looking at here, this would be a student looking at, for example, their one class of students, or a few classes of students. And here we're just showing some basic demographic and program participation information on good old bar charts. So the power here really comes in how educators interact with this and how they can drill down, look at different groups of students, look at different individual students. So here, for example, we make a lot of use of parameters. So let's say, we want to look at a couple different groupings of students. In working with our teachers, a few programs that are, they really think about a lot are English language learners. So let me swap out that group there. Maybe. All right, English language learners, and how about students served through special education as well, students with an individual education plan. So again, here, this is useful information. We can see which students are being served through different programs. But what's really powerful when teachers are using this is that they can start to filter and drill down based on combinations of this information. So let's say we want to look at our emerging bilingual students who are served through special education. We can start combining that information and then getting down to the individual level as well very quickly. So this was really a big need that teachers had. All right, I'm gonna jump over to another view in the teacher workbook that we call the playgrounds. So one thing we heard loud and clear from our teacher focus group is that they wanna have the power in the dashboard. They have analytical questions. They wanna control the data and ask those specific questions that they have. And so one way that we are doing this for them is we've given them basically, this is a big scatter plot of their students. Again, the power here is in the parameters, is in the interactive features. So teachers can come in here and actually choose which two measures they want to compare and look for relationships. So here you can see we're looking at, this is one of our literacy assessments, scores on that, and we've got attendance right here. But let's say as a teacher I want to go in and ask, how does literacy correlate with math? I can just swap that out. And see that there is indeed a positive correlation. Again, we always want to get quickly down to individual students, so I can click on a student and see who that is. And we also think a lot about, serving groups of students. So here you might want to look at students in this lower left quadrant who are struggling in both reading and math. How would you reach those students compared to those who are performing in other ways? And then the last piece I want to point out here in this teacher workbook is something we call the Burrow. And so here, again, we want to keep things kind of simple at the high level, but also give teachers the ability to dig down into their data at any time that they might want to. So the Burrow, I describe this as essentially a portal to other data sets. And so here what we're seeing is, again, these are different pieces acting as links that teachers can use. The numbers down here, for example, show how many students have current data in a given data set. So they can click on any of these and really go in a purposeful way to ask questions about a specific data set for their students. Okay, so I've shown this one dashboard and kind of touched on a few of the design ideas that we really think about in creating interactive, impactful visualizations for educators. I wanted to talk a little bit more about this process and some of the other features in Tableau and design features that we're using. So again, we really think about building dashboards that empower our users to explore the data and to take action with that data. So our principals, our teachers, they are the experts. The power is going to come with them looking at this data, bringing in what they know about their students, and deciding what action to take next. So we just want to enable them to do that in the best way possible. There are a lot of Tableau features that help us with doing that, so I'll talk a little bit about that. And again, just really thinking about data visualization that leads to action, that leads to student success. And I do want to note here that we've been working with some consultants, the data insight partners. They've been really instrumental in helping us with this project, the data warehouse side, the data dashboard side. We have someone from Data Insight Partners here today who will be joining us during the Q&A if you have questions as well. So we're going to talk about a couple examples in this realm. So one of them is looking at behavior or discipline reporting. We'll also look at an example from the IT side as well. So let me jump into the behavior part. So one of the dashboard projects we took on was kind of revamping our behavior reporting. So this is showing the before. What we had before were PDF reports. These were going out monthly to building administrators, just showing statistics about behavior events that had happened in their school. So these give some information, but that behavior data is very dynamic, and this kind of PDF reporting is static. So the information can be very powerful, but it would be more powerful if our administrators could get to it in a timely manner, interact with it, and kind of be able to analyze it more quickly. So let me jump over to that workbook. Okay, so this is showing the behavior dashboard that we came up with. So here I'm starting with the behavior overview. So this is a very high-level view within a school of what's going on with behavior incidents. So here we can look at, for example, what are the behavior events happening? What kinds of resolutions are being taken, et cetera. And we can, again, drill in here to learn more. So, what's up with this no action taken? If I click on that, we can start to see, okay, what are the incidents where no action was actually taken? Where were those happening? Can we learn more about that? Similarly, we might want to know who is the student who had an in-school suspension. Again, we can learn more about that, even the individual student and when that occurred. Yeah, question? Infinite Campus. Yeah.
So your top five resolutions, but unfortunately, 128 of them are other action taken. How do you train your people not to, if you're other action taken, this seems kind of...
It doesn't tell you much.
It doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah.
So who's inputting your behavior? Why is it your assistant principals? You don't allow your teachers to do it.
So it depends. It depends school to school. Yeah, and that's a great question. What are we doing about these categories that aren't very informative? I think we're at the first stage of that, of just looking at how big of an issue is this within your school.
Our behavior data is kind of, I won't say it's a
Yeah.
It's not as informative
As it could be. Yeah, so this has been a great conversation starter to talk with staff about, what are we missing here when we group so many incidents into one category, and what can we do better in our reporting?
I'll add, we do not have data governance now defined or implemented. And there's, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg thing, right? You can put a bunch of governance in and then you have no data that gets out, and that doesn't help. Or it's vice versa, which is kind of where we're at, where there's a lot of access to the data right now with little governance. But as the access starts to highlight the points, the issues where the data isn't clean, where it needs to be more robust, now we can go in and have those conversations. And I think that's part of the maturity model with getting a data culture established in your organization. No, so the question is about our student information system, and does all of Colorado use Infinite Campus, which is what we're using. The majority of Colorado uses Infinite Campus, but not all districts.
Great. So this is great for getting a whole school view, driving those conversations at different levels about what's going on in the school. Here we've got the event and resolution comparison. So again, just showing these different bar graphs to show the trends of what's going on. But again, as we start to click in here and filter, we can get more information. So again, looking at these categories are no action taken, for example. Here we can also look at, again, some useful trends that might inform different things that we might do at the school level. So in this example case, with this dummy data, we can see that this school has a lot of behavior incidents occurring on Thursdays. We can ask questions, this kind of question in different ways. Let's say we want to look at grade level. We can see, for example, that second grade, especially, we're seeing issues there. So again, just helps us, helps our administrators kind of target what do they want to do, what practices might they need to change. Yes. Yeah, we have staff in here as well. Yeah, yep. So again, driving those staff conversations is a huge outcome we've seen. If you can look at these by staff by who's reporting them, yeah. And then here, a really big benefit of using a data warehouse to be pulling this information is that we've been able to do a lot more with analyzing historical trends in our data. So here, there's a couple examples showing how that can be done. So first of all, at the top, we're just looking at distributions of how many events have taken place month by month in different years. So we can see how does this year in the yellow compare to prior years. Another way we can look at that, I really like this viz here, is looking at the day in the school year where we're at. So at this point in the school year, again, this is fake data, so it's a little bit dramatic, but at this point in the school year, how many events do we have compared to a similar point in prior school years? And we can look at that over time, which is really nice. And then just asking those year-over-year questions as well. So here's what we saw before that, events by day of the week. Thursday's been really bad this year, so we can ask, has that been the case before? You know, did that happen last year as well? Yeah, Thursdays were bad last year as well, so what can we do about that now? So this update to the static PDF reporting of behavior data has been really useful and very well received, and as we talked about a little bit, has been driving some new conversations. But that's just one piece of data still. And one of our big picture ideas here with using Tableau, with deploying this in our district, is bringing together different pieces of data that typically would be siloed from each other. And so our next step with the behavior data was to integrate this with other student measures and look at these more holistically. So this is our early warning system workbook. So what we're doing here, you can see we've identified 4 different areas that a student could potentially be at risk. So you can see we've got attendance, behavior, grades, and we take their most recent literacy assessment if they've had that in the last year. And so a point can be assigned if they're meeting a threshold for risk. A student can have between 0 and 4 risk factors. And that's what this top bar is showing here, our distribution of students based on total number of risk factors. Now, one thing we've heard a lot from, especially our principals, is that risk can be pretty subjective. And so one piece that's built into the design here is, again, making a lot of use of parameters in Tableau and filtering as well to give our users the power to set those risk thresholds. So I'll show attendance as an example. Here we're considering students at risk if they dip below 90% attendance. But we have administrators who say, I want to catch kids earlier. I want to look at anyone who's slipping below 95% attendance, and those are the kids that I want to start intervening with even earlier. So we give them the power to update that information, and it updates the entire view to reflect that. Again, here we can also look at different trends at the group level and get down to individuals. So let's say here, for example, we want to focus on our students who are at risk on their literacy assessment, so students who are not reading at grade level. So here, if we focus just on that group, we've now filtered down everything else on the view, including this chart in the middle. And so here, now we're looking at specifically our students reading below grade level, broken out by grade level in this chart. So we can see trends. For example, in 2nd grade and 5th grade, we see relatively higher number of students with multiple risk factors in addition to literacy. We might also ask again about special education here. So an administrator might want to look at their school and think about who here is reading below grade level but is not being served through special education, and might that be an intervention that would be appropriate for some of these students. And then also another feature that's been really useful is really building out our tooltips and taking advantage of that. So here, if we hover over a student, let me go down to this one with 3 risk factors. So we know this student has 3 risk factors, but what are they? We can actually hover here and see, first of all, what those are. So attendance, behavior, and as we know, they're reading below grade level. They're okay on grades though. And beyond just knowing that they are at risk, what's that level? So here we can see attendance, both more recently and in the long term, and see exactly how bad is it for that student, and that can really guide how we need to work with that student further. And another theme that has come up again and again in working with our educators is that, these trends are great. They do have to start with thinking about that universal level of instruction and intervention, but they really do want to quickly get down to the student level. And so you might have noticed on a lot of these views, when you see a student name, we have a link here that says View Student Profile. This has been one of our most popular dashboards, so let me show you that one. So for any student, anytime you see their name in another dashboard, you can directly link to what we're calling their student profile. And so here I'm just going to quickly give an overview of the kinds of information they have here. So now we've drilled down, we have a dashboard that's dedicated for this one student, and we can look at their historical data over time. So for example, here we're looking at, for this student, a couple different kinds of literacy assessments that they have been taking over years, compare those outcomes. We can look at their state assessments. So here we're looking at achievement and growth data on state assessments. I spoke a little bit about attendance. If we're in the early warning system and see a student at risk for attendance, we can actually go straight to their dashboard and see what's going on here. How has this been changing over time? Is it getting better or worse? And why are they missing school? Here's a student who's had a lot of illness and school activity absences. That's going to shape what steps we take next with that student. Okay, so that's one example of how we're building dashboards for our educators, how we're bringing data together from different sources and really guiding them to have that power to better work with their students. So Andrew's going to talk next about another example of our dashboards, specifically in the IT area. Pull this up for you.
Thanks. Okay, so how many are here from an IT organization? Okay, a few of you, good. So I have a statement that my team, I think, rolls their eyes to some degree because I talk about it a lot. And that is that IT needs to optimize for the customer, not for IT. But you have to have data in order to understand what we may be doing internally that is making the life of IT easier, but may not be making our customers' lives easier. So this is our first Tableau dashboard inside the organization of IT. And this is a dashboard that sits inside of our service desk. This is where the calls are coming in. We do just under 30,000 service requests a year. And so there's a rich data pool for us to understand what the problems are and what is happening. This dashboard right now is live. It is our actual view in our service requests. I'm watching this graph when I come in. So we're after the start of the school year, obviously big spike in August, September, and now we're into October, and you can see that we're flattening out. So it's instant information for me. It's also up here where we have open today, resolved today, net today. When that net today is green, it's basically saying we have closed more tickets than we have opened. And so it's an indicator that we're actually making progress on our backlog. We auto sort, so these are all of our schools. I know the font is kind of small here, but at the top is the organization or school that has the most service requests open. If one of those is really jumping out, I can click on it and it will blow it out into the list of service requests. And so I could see what's going on in that realm. I think the big thing about this is the data is driving what we're doing in IT, but it also is an example of implementing a data-driven culture outside of just curriculum, outside of the data realm that we think about in the classroom. There's so much more that can be done with all of us working towards running an organization with data. Koki Stapleton is here. She's from our HR organization. And I'm happy that she's here because HR is starting to now do their first visualizations that will help do what they're doing. Once Koki gets some of these up and we're using them through the organization, business services, this is payroll, finance, who have their own culture using business objects or using the reports that are inside the ERP system. I think it's important that we start to get that type of data put into our data warehouse, and we're able to report out through the power of Tableau to actually drill down a bit. My own budget, and I'll end on this before we move on to the next topic. I have technology money that goes out to each of the schools, and that money is used for employee devices, it's used for student devices, it's used for student testing devices in the cases where students bring in their own device, but they can't test on them because we can't lock them down. But then there's a pool of money that we're calling innovation money. And so all of this at every school can be spent in different ways, but if you're spending more on one than the other, then what does that look like? So the next dashboards that I want to do for IT are actually financial dashboards on how the money is used in each of the schools. And so the hope there, of course, is that we'll be able to use the money more effectively for student outcomes in what we're doing. Let's see, you want to jump back? All right, this one's you.
All right, thank you. Oh, question? Yeah.
No, it's okay if you have a question.
What do you use for your help desk software?
We're using Easy Vista. So the question was, what are we using for our help desk software? Did an RFP.
How do you get the data from your help desk software and your data warehouse?
Yep, so it's an extract that gets pulled out behind this dashboard.
Your own staff did that, or your?
Yes, yes, our one staff. Yes.
You have a dedicated visualization person.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
That's definitely the good start.
All right, so the next kind of piece of the puzzle of another part of this project that I think has really helped with its initial success is how we've been working on the rollout process and supporting our users. So what we're looking at here, I just made a simple map in Tableau, of course, of our school locations. The color coding, just for fun, this is just showing level of our different schools. And so the point here is that we actually, as we started this project and rolled out our initial dashboards to building administrators, our team actually went out to every single school to meet with administrators. And so here I just wanted to show the scope of that. And I'll tell you a little about Boulder Valley School District. So in the middle here, we have a lot of schools clustered in Boulder proper, but we also serve a lot of schools out in some of the outer suburbs. And on this side here, if you're familiar with the geography, this is actually the Rocky Mountains. So we also got to take some nice drives up to the mountains and see some of our beautiful schools up there as well. But the point here is that we traveled around and really did that hands-on piece with the initial rollout to get that initial buy-in. We actually sat down with administrative teams, showed them what was in these dashboards, what was possible with this, and helped them answer their questions in real time about their student data. So this was really impactful for getting that initial buy-in, getting that feedback so we could keep improving and keep showing people that we were listening and we were trying to design for their needs. Andrew alluded to this a little bit before, talking about how we're thinking about bringing our different user groups online over time. So here, this is just a quick mock-up to show who are those groups. So again, in year one, last school year, we started with designing dashboards for district-wide level for school administrators. And then over time, we've been bringing in other groups, key groups of staff who are working with students. So school counselors and registrars, for example, and then this year rolling out to teachers. And then we also think about, for the support piece, part of it is the person-to-person, working with them, training, but also we think a lot about embedded support within our dashboard. So trying to think about design that helps support users and their needs as well. So I talked before about for example, the main page of the teacher workbook, showing different areas based on your need or what you want to learn from the data, how you want to use it. I didn't call these out before, but on every dashboard we have these 5 shapes in the upper right corner that we're calling touchstones. But with each of those, users can hover over any of those icons to get more information about the view that they're looking at. So, for example, they can see what measures are included, how often are those updating, and we also give them some questions to start asking and helping them analyze the data as well. We've also started using our IT ticketing system specifically for support with the dashboards. So that's been really nice just to help us have very responsive and quick turnarounds on getting back to our users and processing feedback. And we also provide a lot of opportunities for training. So going out on site, we've offered webinars for users as well. Visiting with our users has really been the most impactful, I'd say. Oh, going and actually going face-to-face with users has been really impactful.
How many teachers do you have?
2,000, about, yeah.
Who's actually going from site to site?
I am. And I'll talk a little bit more about our training model too, because we have also designed an online course to help reach more people more quickly. Yeah, a question here.
Do you have plans to go public, to have dashboards go public?
Yes, we've also thought about that from the beginning. We're not quite there yet. It can be a little bit fraught, but we definitely do want to start putting out some material publicly. Yeah.
So we have a parallel effort that's just getting off the ground right now to relook at our entire digital communications, everything from our websites to our mobile apps, how we communicate with our parents, how we communicate with our students. And through that process, we will hone in on the best ways to communicate. And it wouldn't surprise me if there isn't a Tableau parent dashboard that they'll be able to get into.
So, of course, when we're talking about student data, we have to think about security as well. And so we put a lot of thought and work into our security model.
So in Colorado, a recent law was passed for student data privacy. Many of these laws have been passed across the country, but it really highlights what our responsibilities are, how they go over and above FERPA, which is the federal not guidelines, rules, laws that we have to file. And with that, we've now have kind of this awareness and security culture inside of our organization. And so the data, though, we basically look at it as who can get access to all the data, who can get access to the school level data, like principals, maybe some of our special ed, PTs, OTs, speech, maybe have more broader view, and then, of course, down to the student level. Clara will talk about how we implemented that different granularity of security in the system.
Yeah, so again, like I said, we've put a lot of thought, and this has been a big effort to build this into our Tableau dashboards and especially distributing on Tableau server. So we think about this as we're kind of taking a combined security approach. Specifically on releasing dashboards on Tableau server, we use a combination of Tableau server groups and row-level security. And so that helps us really target to specific users. Can they see every student? Do we need to tie their security to a given school or even a given, for example, classroom of students specifically? We also, kind of another piece of this puzzle is on the training and provisioning side. So even getting users into the system. And so what we're doing here, I mentioned briefly before about we have an online training for our teachers. And so what we're starting to do this year is actually as teachers complete that training, they will get automatically provisioned and their security rights will be set up based on their role in the district. And so that's been a really great process. Again, Data Insight Partners has worked with us a lot about that. And on the IT side as well. So if you have more questions about how we're doing that, we can definitely talk about that more at the end of the talk and offline as well. And so we want to wrap up talking about some of the outcomes that we've had with this so far and also just looking to the future. What's our vision of where we're going with this next?
So I've been aggressive in moving BVSD into the cloud. I no longer have a data center on site. That's all been moved off-prem to the point where we've even failed over and run the school district last May out of the secondary site out of Phoenix, Arizona. And so it's all about this understanding that other people can do certain pieces of the equation. So getting Tableau completely in the cloud is the ultimate goal. That may take us a few years. Especially the work that Claire is doing and others are starting to do just because of the power of the desktop model. We are a cloud-based organization though, 24,000 Chromebooks now deployed. Our Windows devices peaked at a little over 10,000. It's at about 8,000 and the curve is just this drop of Windows devices falling off the support, and they're basically going to shrink down to a very small number of people. So the whole move to that cloud is important. I think we also will start to expand, and I may say some things that may be a little controversial here in a second. And I say the data expand because ultimately what Claire has done is awesome. It is student data, and you can look at the students and you can see where they're at. Where I ultimately would love to see us get, and I know we'll get there over the next few years, is to bring in HR data and start to look at the 13 years that we have a student. How many of you have K-12 children that are in the system right now? And how many have graduated kids that are in college or beyond right now? All right, so many of you understand what it feels like to be a parent and hoping and working to ensure that you have the best education for your kids. Now, what if we were able to say, let's look at the ACT scores or the SAT scores, kind of that final measure we have, and correlate that back for 13 years to every single teacher they had? What if we looked at the degrees that the teachers had? Does it matter if you have a PhD? Did that correlate out to something better? Does it matter if you had that third grade math teacher whose likability factor was so high that 8 girls out of his class went on to become engineers? You know, what are those non-tangible, those trigger points that allow people to connect? We're also implementing a new network right now. That new network will be able to look into the usage of software. So once it's fully implemented, we'll be able to collect data on what software is being used in each class. I'd love to use that same correlation. Did it matter if software X was used in 6th grade versus software Y? Was there a fall off of some type of learning, or was there a spark of excitement that happened because of that? And so for me, when I look at the future, the possibilities of combined data is just, it's huge, but it will take time for us to get there. Claire?
Yeah, so I think another really exciting outcome that we've observed from just this first little bit of implementing Tableau and implementing this whole project is that it's really pushed our educators and us to talk about data differently. So now we're really asking these important questions when we're talking about data. How do you, what do you want to do with your data? How would this change your practice? And how can you use this to support students? So really tying that data to what are you doing with this? And so we've got a year of data on our implementation to start looking at. So start looking at kind of our initial rollout and evaluate how that has gone. And so we have some promising trends in terms of outcomes. So we saw in our first year rolling out to administrators that regular usage of VizLab tended to be associated with, first of all, higher growth in literacy among elementary students. We saw promising trends in middle school in terms of catch-up, specifically among students who were starting the year behind in literacy, so starting the year reading below grade level. And then at the high school level, we saw trends towards decreases in chronic absenteeism rates, again, related to those schools who were using these dashboards more often. So that's really promising. And this year, so far, one really promising thing we've seen is that our progress with onboarding teachers into this system is also going very well. So there's a lot of hunger there to get to the data. Actually, in this screenshot I took about a week ago, I checked this morning, we're at 31% of our teachers are starting to sign up to get the training to be using these dashboards. And so we're really excited to be going into the future and looking at, can we tie these kinds of outcomes more concretely to how teachers are using this information. And then just in conclusion, I wanted to end with a quote. So at the end of last school year, we sent out an anonymous survey to our administrators to get their thoughts about their first year of using these dashboards, what it was doing for their practice. And I just love this quote: "We're making better decisions for kids based on the data." This is what it's all about. So Tableau has really helped us provide our educators with this powerful data tool, but they are now equipped to turn that data into action and really use it for student success.
All right, we have a few minutes for questions or anything that may be on your mind. Yes, ma'am.
So, with regards to the security, I was unclear. I don't have servers, but are you able to recognize who the user that's logged in and then filter?
Exactly. So the question is, how granular can you get with the security and how does that work? And it's based on the user. It's based on the user login. Yep. Yes, sir. How do we keep? So our service desk is one of the places where when somebody changes roles happens. Now we're also going to a new provisioning system that will be more intelligent and should be able to more effectively and automatically move. So let's say you had a third grade teacher that moved from one school to another school, that they would get the right access at that other school. So there's more maturity to go on there.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Yeah, so the question is this scalable or maybe descalable for smaller school districts? And can I get the ROI due to the cost of resources to make it happen? I think what Claire has done, those dashboards, I think would be helpful. And, I'm sure we could share what we've done. But you still have to have somebody that can do the extracts, right? Can get the data moved to where you need it. And so I think that will always be kind of a factor in what can be done. I don't know if Claire, if you have anything else to add on that.
I guess I'd just add on the dashboard side, I think it is really scalable at any level, because really, we're all trying to get down to students and looking at information on students. So I would say you could apply this to different sizes of groups and still get good outcomes.
So the cost perspective, though, it may beg the question, do we all collectively work with Tableau to get into a pricing model that's more student-based? To help drive the cost down for those that don't have very many students, and of course, those that have more would pay more.
Are there any plans to teach like Tableau in high schools?
So are there any plans to teach Tableau in the high schools? That's a great question, and at this moment, no. We're doing a concerted effort to focus on computer science and doing things to try to get more people engaged in computer science. There's specific things for girls who code, trying to bring that awareness, but for everybody, just because there's so many jobs. I think once that's done, the whole computer science analytical thing plays right into this, and Tableau could be something that we do in the future, but right now we're not looking at that.
Yesterday they were saying in one of the sessions we were at, it's like the third fastest growing skill.
Yes, piece of software, yes. Yes, sir.
I have two questions. One, is your slide deck going to be available on the TC website?
Yeah, so.
And the other question I have is, on your last screen there, you attributed using Tableau to an increase in your attendance and an increase in literacy. How did you establish that correlation? There were no other programs going on at the time that would have influenced attendance or influenced literacy?
Yeah, so it's a preliminary analysis, and those were trends going in that direction. So, we're working from year one of data. So,
Your behavior data was like,
Right.
And I assume you had SIS data before that you were able to run reports on your behavior and things of that nature, but they were so dramatically low compared to, we're now using infinite campus, and it's like, he looks at your logging and the behavior, and then starts to really sound like it.
Yeah, and I should say that was fake data, so it's not really showing any real school.
Are you surveying your teachers on the impact that's having in the classroom, on their level of understanding of Tableau, how much they're actually...
So the question is, are you surveying your teachers? We will be doing that. You may have noticed. Exactly.
Yeah.
Claire's last slide, or one of her last slides, was about 30% of the teachers are in. Every teacher is required to get in by the end of this school year. And so after this first year, then it'll give us opportunities to do surveys. I'm going to go to the gentleman in the back, and then I'll go over to you, sir. Go ahead.
So are you able to use learner activity data in any of your products? You're looking at all the output data, are you also able to look at progress on the
So progress, I guess in the sense of grades, we would have that, but
or more like as they're in the digital products that you guys are using with your students, like using that, how they're actually doing versus the outcome. Do you have that?
not at this time. But I think your question's a great one, right? The more data that we have on what they're using and how they're using it in the class, be that software, be it printed material, be it the way the teacher is delivering the material, I think as we gain insights into gathering that type of data, then we can get better correlations and better understanding of what's happening. Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, so I really like the makeup. I noticed that most of it is either just slice and dice of what you have to dig down into, or a kind of some outcomes things. We talked a little bit about data quality, and I didn't see much about like the integrity of the data, like making sure that we're saying it's real. I was wondering what you guys like plans moving forward.
Yeah. So the question is around data quality, and a huge issue. I think the awareness alone has driven the desire and need to get better data into Infinite Campus, our student information system on behavior and outcomes. I think this will be part of a governance model later on, though, that focuses even greater. We know, though, that bad data is just going to produce bad results. So,
To identify like what we've noticed in our transparency is we notice some people are better at this data stuff than others.
yes.
Are you able to identify those people?
So not yet. Claire, I don't know if you would add anything to that.
Yeah, are we able to identify who's creating dirty data, basically? Yeah, it's a good question. I think we do want to look at it, but carefully. Not assigning blame, but working with people constructively to improve those processes. We do have, on our student enrollment side, for example, there's a lot of work on data quality and improving that and checking that. And so I think we're just starting these conversations and thinking about how else can we use the tool on the data quality side and create the right drivers to get people to be entering better data, for sure.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So the question is, have we had any challenges working with the teachers union? And my comments earlier about, I may say some things that are controversial, right? Looking at degrees and does that help or not help? Those discussions will continue on. We're fortunate in Boulder that the administration and the union have a very good working relationship, to the point where our union president is actually a member of cabinet. And so she hears all the conversations we have, and that helps with transparency and the recognition that it's not like, administration is trying to do something just to do something difficult with the teachers. We also, in all honesty, have a state law now in Colorado, Senate Bill 191, that is basically requiring school districts to do more with evaluations and how teachers teach and outcomes. And so that's also helping drive those proper cultural changes that are happening. Mandate the use of Tableau? We actually have, in the sense that this year every teacher is required to go through the training, which is set up in our LMS system, and to at least log in once. Now that may sound like a really low bar,
Gotta start somewhere.
but if you can get, let's say of all the teachers that log in, you get 30% of them that go, holy cow, that 30% will start talking to the other 60, 70%. I'm a product of public schools myself, and I'm still learning. Yes, ma'am.
Strategies for setting up building level champions other than the principal, but like an attack specialist or a go-to
Yes, so the question is, do we have any plans to set up building level specialists to make this happen? And I don't think we've had those detailed conversations yet, but it sparked an idea. When we rolled out Google, we did something called the Google Ninjas. They were in every single school, and they were early adopters, and they helped with that transformation. Claire, I don't know, any other?
Yeah, I think we're not formally there yet, but just with our model of rolling out to principals first, quite a lot of principals, honestly, assistant principals, even more, have kind of taken on that role, and we've really, always worked with them to be telling them, you are the expert in your building with this. That's been helpful. I think also in building our teacher focus group, that was kind of a good way to help identify some of those teachers who are especially hungry for the data, ready to be thinking about these questions, and they have definitely taken back that excitement to help onboard their fellow teachers as well. So yeah, that's a great idea though.
Cool. All right, I think we have time for a couple more. Ma'am? So are you talking more about a project manager for the whole project, or more of like a champion at a school that would? We don't, but we do have a strategic plan. You may have seen a logo up there called the Success Effect, and that drives a lot of what we do. But project management and the rollout of this broader and larger, at some point what Claire is doing, what David Tomashik, who's the technical guy behind this, are doing, will help with external consultants when we need it, is only going to scale so far. And we know that there's going to have to be more structure put around the whole effort. But you have to prove what you can do first, right? And I think Claire has just done a rock star job in getting us to that point of proving what we can do. And now it'll be the discussions in the next couple years as we go forward to get there. Yep. Let's see, ma'am?
This is about security. So you have users who are limited to look at school level data and not drill down to the student, right?
No, if they can look at school level, they can drill down to the student.
Okay,
Yeah.
so everybody can drill down to the student.
No.
Okay, so what my question is those people who can't look at the student level, do you deal with cell size suppression?
Oh, maybe we should talk offline. I have some calculations that we use for that.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Mostly what you talk about, like permissions or anything else, the visualizations that you created, are you doing like supplying the data sources and allowing sort of power users to start creating, like, to explore the questions you haven't created visualizations to create their own actually?
Yeah, so the question is, are we allowing others to create their own visualizations kind of outside the realm of this? And yes, we are. I think Koki, I mentioned earlier from HR, she is pulling from the HR databases, spreadsheets, and she has the capability to do visualizations there. This is all under that umbrella. Get data out there, get people used to Tableau and what it can do, and then we'll identify the data they're using, pull it into the data warehouse, and then make it more formalized. You know, it's interesting. I'm wondering if Claire and I will be back, maybe not next year, but the year after that, talking about governance and the transition into a kind of a startup world we're in now into a sustainable world into the future. These are great questions that have got me thinking. All right, one last question. Ma'am?
So as you're interacting with teachers, I know every time we try to roll out new technology with teachers, it's the whole, oh God, this is just one more thing. And as you mentioned, they're using a lot of programs already, technology in the classroom, most of which have their own dashboard based to that. So have you had any, yes, teachers kick back and say, well, I've already got that data for this part, or I already know which of my students are low, I already know which of my students are not attending right classes. And so how is it coming in? How are you responding?
Yeah, so the question is about pushback from teachers. So first of all, this is one more thing I have to do. That is always a hard ask. But also there are other systems that are doing their own data visualizations. You know, for example, the literacy assessment I showed before, teachers can log in and look at some visualizations of those data. The real benefit that we are offering is, I talk about it as one-stop shopping for their data. So it's really going back to the data warehouse. We're bringing together these pieces that, you know, instead of logging into 3 different systems, they can go and get that view right there of all those pieces together. And I think that's really helped to sell it. And yes, we still get those comments, of course, but I think that piece has really helped a lot.
I think it's important to recognize that we have this bell-shaped curve, and we have the teachers that are pulling us faster than we can go. And then we've got most of the teachers that are like, I'm cool, just tell me what needs to be done, and they get on board. And then we have the ones on the other end that are, for whatever reason, pushing back. And I have another saying with my group that is, go where the energy is, and don't worry so much about those that are pushing back, and because there's enough to do with those that want to get to where we are. All right, I want to be respectful of all of your time, and we are out of time. Claire and I will be here, though, and as will our team members. So if you have any other specific questions, please come up and ask us. Thank you.
Thank you.